Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7 Israel's editor's note, Jonathan Hassan, and in today's edition, we are going to discuss many issues throughout the region, opportunities as well as challenges. To start first and foremost with the situation in the Gaza Strip. We'll touch on that briefly since there's not much to update there. Nevertheless, the situation in Lebanon, Iran, Syria, Yemen, and elsewhere, they all are troubling regions that need some sense of attention. And to do so, I am delighted to be joined by my dear friend and colleague, Brigadier General in Reserve Doron Gavish, formerly the commander of the Israeli Air Force
Air and Missile Defense.
Air and Missile Defense. There you go. General Gavish, it's always a pleasure.
It is my pleasure, Jonathan, to be here with you. And you know, I was really thinking about it, that, and I've said it more than once, that being here with you and TV7 as all, it is always, I would say, intriguing, because we could really speak in depth into the issues. It's not a snapshot. It is really, I think, an option also for us to explain and to share with our viewers and also our viewers that I see that they are commenting, they are part of it. You know, I was thinking about it, that it became a community. I mean, really, TV7 in its viewer all over. So I think it's very important. So really, thank you for allowing me to be here with you.
Thank you for being here. You're a busy man, so we always appreciate you coming, and all glory to God for all that we do here at TV7. Just to point out to you, we are a 501c3, a nonprofit, as part of which all of our productions are free of charge, be it on the channel you're currently watching on, or on social media, or elsewhere. We provide all of the content for free for educational purposes, also for Christians to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, for Jews, for everyone who is keen on the situation in Israel and the region around the world. What are the direct and indirect implications to the peace of Jerusalem and the situation, the security, of course, of Israel. And with that, if you are blessed by our productions and you're an avid viewer and are always on top of things because of what we do, we would also like to encourage you to support our endeavors. You can do so with a donation via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Now, General Gavish, I think it's you know, you have your yellow pin on your jacket. We just need to highlight that Ran Gvili, the remains of Ran Gvili, who was murdered on October 7th of 2023, and he was an off-duty police officer who went and tried to protect the residents of southern Israel, was killed on that day, his body was taken captive into the Gaza Strip, and he has yet to be returned, which is a breach by the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates, Palestinian Islamic Jihad and other terrorist organizations, of President Trump's 20-point plan. Hamas is also not seemingly eager to relinquish control of the Gaza Strip, despite its commitment to do so, and it's unwilling also to disarm, which is another commitment it is trying to push back on, with the support of the Qataris, the Turks, and others who are trying to salvage this Muslim Brotherhood affiliate organization from relinquishing control. What should we take out of this complexity? And are you optimistic?
Well, complexity is the key word, Jonathan, to what we are seeing, not only in the Gaza Strip. We could say that we see it all along. But it's very important that you started with Iran, because, you know, people have to understand, for us and Israelis, this is an issue of moral. This is something that it's an obligation of us, mainly the defense forces, but not only, everyone as a nation, that if someone was kidnapped and this time was killed by those terrorists, we have to bring them home. live or dead. And this is really a closure of the 7th of October. And this is why it is so important. And this is why Israel is saying again and again, we're not going to move to the next step until the last hostage, dead or alive, would be back in Israel, and Ran is there. And we see the cruelty of the Hamas. They are playing with it. They know exactly that this is what we are saying, and they are playing with it, because if they really want, they would be able to bring him back to Israel.
It's clear they're buying time. But to what end?
Well, I think that they are gaining time in their state of mind. This is the modus operandi all the time. They are gaining time, and they said maybe with time things would happen. In the meanwhile, of course, they are establishing their control in the Gaza Strip. We also have to say that. And so, for their point of view, they have time. They're not running. They're not running to the next step, because the next step demands them to start giving back some of their weapons and so on. And they're not really willing for it, at least as we see it now. So this is really a very challenging situation. And there is always the question, okay, until what point we could allow this thing to go on and on and on, because from their point of view, this is the end step. They are there. Ran is not back in Israel. Everything is stopped. So it is playing for them, I think, for their advantage. The idea is really to, in one point, they should understand that they cannot go on with it, and should be a time that we say, okay, until this date, if you guys are not going to bring Ran back, we are going to do it forcefully, and we are going to go back to fight with you. Literally, this is what should be said to them. I think that everyone understands it. We are still, Israel, the official Israel is still giving some time to see what is going on. But I think that
At the request of the Americans, let's be
under
clear.
request of the Americans, but I think not for too long. I mean, in some point, we cannot allow it to go on like this.
President Trump has been clear and unequivocal that unless Hamas disarms, Israel will be granted the green light to reestablish its high-intensity operation against Hamas, including in Gaza City, where Hamas remains in control, reasserted its control following the adoption of President Trump's 20-point plan on October 10 of last year. But if we really look at this complexity, on the one hand, President Trump wants to establish or implement the philosophy of prosperity, to drive a lot of prosperity into the region, and to make that possible, and obviously to capitalize on that, but to make that possible, he requires stability. Now, there is a break of philosophy here between the Israeli position to the American position, the way I see it, at least. From the American perspective, it seems like they are pushing to patch things up, so to speak, to put a bandage to say, okay, let's revert back to the way things were before the war, status quo ante bellum, right? The way things were before the war, to establish that to the pre-October 7th paradigm, which obviously is not something that they want to see as an end state, but they say, if we reach that at least, which is something that the adversaries and enemies of the West, of Israel, of the United States, and others are willing to go to, we will be able then to use that momentum to translate a lot of prosperity into long-term peace. From Israel's perspective, however, it says, no, look, you can't patch up something that didn't work, and we had to deal with the consequences of what didn't work in that paradigm with October 7th, murdering some 1,200 civilians mostly, wounding some 4,800 others, and kidnapping 251 people on the day of October 7th. That is not something that Israel can go back to, and any Israeli government that would opt to try in something like that, to go back to the paradigm of October 6th of 2023, will collapse immediately. That is just the basics. So there is that gap, right? But nonetheless, if we see that gap right now the way it is. And we see Hamas exploiting the American position for its advantage and saying we're not going to disarm anytime soon. We're seeing that it's also impacting the Iranian proxy in Lebanon, Hezbollah, which is also saying we're not going to disarm. What are we to do on that front?
From one angle, I think that we should all look to President Trump. And I think that also our enemies are looking at President Trump. And I could say that they should take him seriously. I think that they are looking at Venezuela, and he was saying again and again and again what is going to happen, and he did it. Same in Iran. No one was really thinking that U.S. bombers would come and would strike Iran nuclear plant, but it happened. And he said that this is exactly what is going to happen. So I think that, all over, people have to take him very seriously. When he says something, you should believe him. I believe him. And so I think that, looking on this gap that you were mentioning, I don't think that we have a gap for the long run. We both want the same. We both want stabilized Mediterranean. We all want prosperity.
It's a tactical gap. It's not a strategic one.
It's not a strategic one for sure. Right. On the end, where are we going goal. In the end goal? But in the way there, you're right. This is really a challenge, and people have to understand, from the Israeli point of view, I always said, the 7th of October is here, is always here. And the main lesson learned out of it is that we cannot allow our enemies to have those options to strike Israel, to attack Israel, because we know that they will do it. So we have to tackle it before it is growing, before they are coming back to their capabilities. So we could give it some time, but not too long. At some point, Israel would have to react to what is going around us. And our enemies, unfortunately, they're not there yet. They didn't say, okay, we want peace, we want prosperity, we're thinking about economy. They're saying the opposite. Right. We hear it from Iran, we hear it from Hezbollah, we hear it from the Houthis, when we hear it from the Hamas. So I hope that we get there. I hope that the momentum would be there. But I think that they should know that if President Trump is saying it, and they should know that the Israeli strand is that we won't allow it to go forever, and then they would have to make their decisions. And if they will make the wrong turn, we would be there.
As I mentioned in our conversation before the program, a sentence I hear very often in Washington and elsewhere is, don't take Trump literally, take him seriously.
Exactly.
It is something that I think more and more countries are taking to heart. I do suggest people read The Art of the Deal. It does lay or shed a lot of light on the type of approach that President Trump takes into the different equations. And very often you'll see efforts by the Trump administration to establish some sort of parity or overlapping from a Venn diagram type of approach towards various conflict-ridden regions, and to try and then stabilize the region. But it seems like at this point in time, we are seeing a lot of challenges that President Trump has managed with his team, and many in his team are fulfilling what he wants to see in their interpretation of how the modus operandi basically is moving forward. But ultimately, reality on the ground seems to dictate, or rather not dictate their course of action, but challenge their discourse and their aspirations. Now, going back to Lebanon,
but if I may say, Jonathan, I think that when it comes to it, and we saw it in more than one place, is that although it is being challenged, the United States and the discussion between Israel and the United States, at the end, we understand each other. And at the end, the United States is allowing, in a way, supporting Israel, doing things that we didn't do in the past. because they understand that the Israeli point, they understand the Israeli strategy, they understand where we are. And I think that there is a very, very good discussion between those two nations. Well, you know, we hear it from our prime minister again and again, and he says that always that President Trump is probably the best president that Israel could ask ever. And when you look on what is happening around, I think he's right. I mean, what is happening with this administration, the support that we had in the last 2 years, of course, in the 12 days war, looking at what is happening in Gaza, and I think that overall we should be blessed, really, blessing the situation that we are at with the United States. And I'm optimistic. You asked me before if I'm optimistic. Yes, I am. I am optimistic that things will go to the right direction at the end state, although maybe on the way there we would have to go sometimes to the right, sometimes to the left, but to the end, I'm optimistic.
You know, the United States and Israel are true partners,
Yeah.
and that is something that it's really amazing to see. Even in the national security strategy that was published back in December, and ultimately provided a very clear agenda of the Trump administration. It did indicate that, yes, the Monroe Doctrine is going to be the focus of this administration. It's going to push forward all kind of or rather prioritize certain areas over others based on the national security interests of the United States, which is a very important approach. And I think that every country should do that when it comes down to it. But ultimately, it also highlights the value of partnerships, proactive partnerships. And those partnerships are those that they really work on. You know, married people and business people, they can relate to this very much because they need to work for that relationship to be smooth, to listen to each other, to approach each other with the dignity and respect that requires to make a relationship flourish. And I truly believe that despite there being a lot of interest-driven partnerships, here also it's absolutely interest-driven. The level of interoperability between the United States and Israel, with Israel being a partner that really pushes forward American interests throughout the region and beyond, it really is something that I think Europe is looking at and learning from. Other actors are learning from, to try and understand, okay, what is that dynamic that needs to be created in order to make Western civilization flourish. And that is a tough position to be in, including when it comes to the Iranian file, among others, the so-called crank. You know, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, they operate together at a different level, but their joint aspirations is to bring about the downfall of the United States, of Europe, of Australia, of New Zealand, of South Africa, to draw them all into their side and ultimately bring about the Judeo-Christian civilization to make it crumble.
I fully agree with you. And, you know, going back to this, by the way, amazing document. I really suggest everyone to look at it, to our viewer, just look at this document. And the other thing is that when you read it, you see that the United States is behaving accordingly.
Yeah.
It is quite amazing to see, because sometimes those documents are come out, but you see the strategy of a nation doesn't really correlate with it. But the United States, you see full correlation. Within this document, one of the things that it's very important from our point of view, there is only one country that is being mentioned in the Mediterranean, and this is Israel. And the importance of the security of Israel. So I think this is very important to mention. But the other thing, and you were kind of also saying it, both sides are gaining. I mean, we have to be humble. okay, we are not as big as the United States. Always when I talk with my friends in the United States, I tell them that you could take Israel, put it in Michigan Lake, and it would sink. So we are quite small. But then from the other end, I think that still Israel and the relations between Israel and the United States, both sides are really gaining out of it. Of course, if we're getting to the military point of view, you know, if as an example, you know, just an example, what happened here with the multi-tier defense and the way that we are defending Israel against rockets and missiles and so on. This is really kind of a blueprint of how this way of fighting should be done all over the world. And one of the decisions of President Trump was to build the Golden Dome. So you could see that the aspiration is coming from Israel. So the idea really is that there is both sides here. There are interests, as you said, but there is a lot of morals and you know, again, here in TV7, I think that we are a little bit more sensitive to it. But when I meet in all kinds of occasions, U.S. officials, U.S. officers, you go with them to Jerusalem, you go with them with places that are part of the, you know, our combined heritage. And there is a lot of combined history. And there is a belief in one God. And it's, at the end of the day, this is really the Holy Land. And I think this is also part of the relations between Israel and United States. So once again, I'm optimistic.
Yeah, the majority of the senior American officers are born-again Christians and are true believers who come here and serve wholeheartedly and also experience the amazing history that can be seen here in Israel, which is obviously founded by the you know, you read the Bible and it comes to life in this region. With that, I would like to take this opportunity actually to congratulate former Representative Mark Walker, who has just been appointed over the weekend or prior to the weekend as the principal advisor to religion, to freedom of religion, to President Trump. He is very passionate about this topic, and I believe him to be the man that God has instilled for this moment in time, which is a very important part of the American Constitution. Actually, the protection of religious minorities, Christians in particular, is a constitutional obligation. Unfortunately, those type of immigrants who do not believe in Western civilization and do not believe in the United States seem to seep in to the cracks when those things happen. Though, you know, good people cannot remain silent and need to stand up for those issues and fight back.
Yeah, for sure. But allow me, Jonathan, I think that in the last few minutes that we have, it is really important to talk about Iran. And what is going on in Iran. We've seen things like this in the past, but this is also a bit different. So we all are watching carefully, of course, of what is happening in Iran. From a security point of view, we have to understand that this is a very sensitive time.
Very.
We've talked about it more than once. Everyone talks about the miscalculations that might be occurring over there by the Iranians. So I think that this is something that both Israel, United States, and also all the whole region, we have to be very carefully looking at them. By the way, also on the proxies, the Houthis, because they are also there. And this is a very sensitive time. I don't think that this is one of the Israeli jobs to intervene in what is happening among the civilians of within Iran. This is something that
this is a domestic issue.
This is a domestic issue. Yes. They would have to take care of themselves. We hope they would go to the right path, and we really support them from here, but nothing more than than that. And from the security point, we have to be very strong, and we have to remember all the time, going back to the strategy, going back to the discussion that we had before. From Israel point of view, we cannot allow Iran to rebuild themselves, to rebuild their missiles. And if they would continue on this way, Israel won't be sitting aside. Israel would react to it. And I hope that they also, with the US patient, but until some point they would go to the right path, because otherwise I think we won't have any chance and to react to it.
So President Trump has leveled a couple of threats to the Ayatollah regime in Tehran. If they are going to attack the civilians, as they did in the past, where they just fired machine gun fire into crowds of Iranian civilians, the United States will devastate Iran. I think the Iranian regime and the establishment there is on heightened alert. They're very concerned of this. Open source intelligence indicates also a lot of activities with regard to potential preemptive, as the chief of staff of the Iranian army said. But I do think that if the Iranian regime, I agree that Israel shouldn't, it should take a back seat, let the Iranian people take care of their own and deal with this, and they have the capacity to do that. People don't always understand the dynamics of those type of things. They do have the capacity to do that. And with that being said, if the Iranians by mistake miscalculate and want to divert attention to some type of war with Israel and launch attack against Israel, be it directly from Iran or its proxies, personally, I think that Israel should send all of the tools at its disposal, well, not all, but most of the tools at its disposal, kinetically, and degrade the regime to a point of no return, to destroy every element of the Iranian regime, and to ensure a regime change by force. And this is something that I know is very dramatic to state, but the Iranians should be put on notice and are on notice. They need to be very, very careful in the next several days, several weeks, because this might cost them more than they can bear. General Doron, Gavish, thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of you at home as well, and wish you a good week. This week we will have my wife, Mayan, host TV7 Israel News on a daily basis, as I'll be traveling. But nonetheless, I look forward to seeing all of you very soon once more. So for me, from here in Jerusalem, until our next edition, Shalom.